Hello everyone, I'm Esther Vaida and welcome to Hometown Talents and Treasures. Our guest is David Cullen. For over 27 years, David has worked in the security, risk management, and investigations field. He now runs Intelligence Security International and is also very involved with several nonprofits, including Burlington Community Life Center, Girls Leap, and Inner City Weightlifting. David, welcome.
Hi, how are you today?
All right, doing great, but you know, in this world, it's not a safe world anymore. It's not the world we grew up in. Shootings almost every week, public events, tragedies like the Boston Marathon, bombings. What's the number one thing that you tell people, whether they're going to work, to school, or at a public event, to do?
It's certainly changed a lot from when I was a child, and the most important thing is to be prepared. I think all too often we take it for granted that we know where we're going, we think we know what we're going to walk into, and very rarely do we think about the what if. So our job, my job with my clients is to prepare for the what if. If you're going to be at a large scale event, what are the things that you should think about? How to be aware of your surroundings, things that you may look for that might stand out. And as we saw from the Boston Marathon bombings, there was a number of people that saw the two alleged suspects and the backpacks and the bags. But it took some time to put that all back together and put that puzzle back together with law enforcement.
And so what are some of the things to watch for?
The kind of the common things that you want to pay attention to are your surroundings. Who's around you? Are you noticing any people that just seem to not belong? They usually stand out. People that are carrying large bags or boxes or then putting them down and just leaving them and walking away. So you really want to pay attention to who's around you, what they're carrying, and what they're doing. When we think about schools, that's a totally different avenue to think about as far as how people view security. And
yeah, let's talk about schools, because as I mentioned, shootings almost a weekly thing now at schools. And I know you do some consulting with some school departments across the state. What are some things that are the responsibility of the school?
There's only so much everybody can do. We always talk about security or safety as everybody's responsibility. Everybody has to take some ownership into the process. The schools are certainly responsible to make sure they provide a safe environment for the children and the teachers and the people that are going to be there. And they always do that. The reality, though, is if someone truly has something in mind to commit a bad act, it's very hard to predict when they're going to do that, and if you can stop that in advance. So you try to put in as many precautions as you can and as many safety nets as you can, and that is a layered approach. Security is built on layers. We take a look at the facility, the outside, and we work our way in. In some instances, we start internally and work our way out. What is the core that we're protecting? A school, we would probably start from an exterior standpoint, looking at the grounds, the building, how we would protect that, how we ensure students and teachers and faculty get from point A to point B. And then once they're inside, designing a plan internally to make sure that they're safe while they're inside. But again, as we've seen, if someone truly has a very negative intent, all too often that shows up when they can, breach one of the security measures.
I want to ask you about a few of these things. First, what do you think of a police officer in a school? And what do you think about cameras in schools?
We'll start with the easier one, in my opinion. I think cameras are a great tool if used properly. I think most people believe that if they put cameras in place, someone's monitoring those cameras at all times. And that's not the intent of why you put cameras up. You put cameras up to give you a feedback, some viewing, if something were to happen. So if I had a critical area, I could go back to that camera, pull that video and be able to look at it and pull it apart and maybe dissect it. A lot of people believe that cameras are put in place and that there's someone magically behind the screen watching those 24 hours a day. And that's not going to happen. That takes a lot of money and a lot of energy to do that. As far as law enforcement in schools, it's really a very mixed topic and it's very emotional for a lot of people. A lot of people truly believe that having an officer or officers in schools in general is a great addition. And then there's those that believe it's a little bit over the top. I'm kind of mixed in the sense that I think there's value in any type of security measure you can put in place. I think it has to be measured. I think you have to look at what the value of that person or that product you're putting in place is going to be, and make sure that it's going to fit the needs of that school or that district or that facility for that matter. So I don't think there's a one-stop shopping that we should put police officers in schools. I think there's value, but it also comes at a very high price to put a school resource officer in every school, in every city, in every town.
Yeah. In your opinion, are teachers and faculty prepared for the shootings that we've seen across the country in terms of protecting their children? I mean, we hear some of these incredible stories of heroes stepping up and protecting children, but on a sort of a training way, or are they trained, do you think? So?
Well, since 9/11 and since some of the other shootings, you get to Newtown and Columbine and some of the other ones, teachers today or faculty and staff are more prepared today than they've ever been. Would I like to see more training? I would. Very few organizations, public and or private, spend a lot of money on training. We have a tendency to train once, and we don't have a tendency to retrain. You asked at the opening, what are the things that we can do? And preparedness is it. In being part of being prepared is being trained. You can't expect to train teachers, staff, or any individual once. Law enforcement, for example, trains on events more and more to be prepared for those events if they or should they occur. You look at since Newtown and since Columbine, law enforcement today trains and drills in schools more now than they ever have in their history. And it's unfortunate that it's happened. They're more trained and prepared for it today, but we can't stop there. We're not going to stop somebody from doing a bad act a lot of the times. What we can do is train the people that are going to be the first responders or the people that might be in that situation that deal with it, teachers, faculty, staff, to make sure that, God forbid that event happen, they know what to do, where to be, how to secure the children, how to protect themselves, and how to, most importantly, get that notification out to make sure that the people who can respond, that are trained, do respond.
Let's talk about work safety. What can folks do? There has been a few instances of workforce violence, but what can companies do to protect their employees?
Awareness and training. They really can. It's very simple. It's not a complicated or a complex problem to solve. We need to think about how we train the individuals that are within our boundaries and in our control to deal with those situations should they occur. We see organizations today spending a little bit more money on training for some of those things, but not a lot. Some of the bigger organizations.
Until it's too late.
Unfortunately, 95% of my business is after the fact. People call after an event. We see after the school instances or shootings in movie theaters, or we just had a shooting last week at a mall. We have a tendency to spend a lot of money after an event, and we kind of get lulled to sleep a little bit before the events, because if nothing's happening, people don't see a value in spending money on security or preparedness, because they figure it hasn't happened. Why keep putting money out there for something that hasn't happened? Then when it does happen, the floodgates open and they want to spend money and they want to try and find a resolution to try and hopefully not let it happen again. My preference, stop it the first time or try and prevent it the first time versus responding to it the second and third time.
Let's move on and talk about some of the other issues. And, almost weekly, I get an email from some unknown person from another country who's asking for money for something, or a phone call from, strange, people call it phishing or you call it social engineering scams. How did all this get started? I mean, how does it work for those that perhaps haven't had any of those calls or emails?
It's been around a very long time, hundreds of years. Social engineering as a whole has been around hundreds of years, where people, deceive somebody into giving information they wouldn't otherwise give. And that can be done in person, it can be done over the phone, or it can be done electronically. You hear the term phishing a lot, especially when it comes to electronic type scams, where they're sending you emails or they're sending you something that you believe is real and ask you to respond. When you think about the electronic side of the house, a lot of the scams that we see come from or pretend to be coming from your bank or from something that you would believe is real. You purchase something on Amazon and you believe that Amazon is now sending you a question and asking you to validate your credit card information. Your bank sends you a letter electronically that asks you to provide critical data. None of those organizations would ever do that. They would send it to you in writing through the hard US mail, or you would get a phone call from them that you could validate it's truly them. They're not going to send you an email and ask you to give up that information. We see a lot right now going on, and it was just in the news the other day, the IRS scams have started where they're calling a lot of folks, a lot of times the elderly who are a little bit sometimes less sophisticated when it comes to the newer technology, and saying that you have a problem with the IRS, we need this information. When people hear the word IRS, or the letters IRS I should say, they begin to panic. So they believe it's true, and they start to volunteer information willingly that compromises your personal safety and your personal identity. You start to give up a lot of information you shouldn't otherwise give.
And opening up some of those emails, you see the subject, help my son, or something like that, and you open up and could lead to a virus that can eat up and destroy your computer.
It can. I do a lot of speaking engagements on this topic, and I try to remind folks, you can't control what you receive electronically. You can control what you do with it electronically. We all get very excited when we see...
No, it's impulsive. I got an email, open it.
I have a new email. It's like from the movie years ago, you've got mail. People get very excited when they see that I have a new email, and they almost can't help themselves but click on it. I always try to tell folks, if you don't recognize who that's from, or something seems amiss, delete it. I delete it and call the person. So if I received an email from you that seemed a little strange, a lot of the ones that you see when someone's account has been hacked is you'll receive an email from somebody you know, because they have that person's database. And if I received an email from you that said, hi, check out this link, I would never click on that because I know instantly it's a scam. I know you would never send me something like that. So before I clicked on it, first I would delete it. Second, I would call you and say, geez, I received a very strange email from you, and my guess is someone's hacked into your account.
How come so many accounts are being hacked into? I had my Twitter account hacked into a few times. Who does these things, and why do they do them?
They want access to your database and your information, and it's easy. We put all of our information daily out on the internet for everybody to see. We use social engineering, and we use social websites like Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, and all of our information goes out there daily. There's a value to us putting that information out there. Someone in your industry putting that out there is important. But it also opens you up for someone to attack you, because since your name's so prominent and it's out there all the time and you're in that mix, people have a tendency to start honing in on who they want to try and hack into.
Why? What's the benefit for them?
If they can get into your account and take over your identity, they become you. It's just like stealing your social security number, your credit card's number, they become you. And if they can manipulate that data and make some money from it, it's good.
Dave, I had a friend of mine's mother who opened up one of these emails and had to get everything new driver's license, all new credit cards, and she lost everything.
It happens daily. I have a family member whose identity was stolen, and it took us 2 years to correct that. And I know the places to go and the things to do, and it took 2 years to clean the credit report and make sure it was gone and make sure it was handled and it didn't come back. So it's happening daily. The numbers, they didn't escalate this year as much as they have other years, but they're not slowing down either. They're definitely on the rise.
Okay, so don't open emails that are not familiar. Don't go to crazy websites. But the reality is, like for instance, I probably shouldn't mention this, but I do everything online. My banking, my shopping, my work is online. And so on the opposite end, I have a friend who does not have a Facebook, a Twitter, never checks his email, does not do any online interactions. So in which side do you go on? I mean, obviously I'm much more open to being hacked, but then it's the reality of what we have.
It is. We're an online society today, and we're going to continue to be. We're not going to go backwards and all of a sudden not start using the tools that are available to us. So we're going to continue to use that. There's simple things you need to do and be cautious about. You need to make sure that you understand who you're doing business with over the internet. At the top screen when you go to a website, if you're going to purchase something or you're going to put any personal data in there, next to the letters HTTP, if you do not see the letter S, then you don't ever put your credit card or your personal information
Why?
in there. S stands for, it's basically like a secure website which has been validated to ensure that it's at the highest level of security. So if you were going to purchase something today and you were going to go to a website and you went to Amazon, you would see that it would say HTTPS semicolon //. That's telling you that that website has been protected. So you can feel as confident as you can be about giving up your information at that point. But I still see many folks that go to sites, they don't pay attention to the websites they're on, and they put their personal data there. Using computers in open Wi-Fi areas, coffee shops, hotels, things you want to avoid. You don't want to be in those situations where you're putting in personal data in an open Wi-Fi network, because people hack those regularly. There's people that go and sit at the coffee shops regularly to hack those types of situations, because people are willing to come and put in their passwords and their usernames. Hotels. We get very excited when we go to a hotel and there's free Wi-Fi. We're more excited when there's a free computer to use. Well, the bad guys put what we call key tracking software onto those computers and hotels and lobbies. So every person that comes in and logs in, uses their username and their password, it's now stored. And the bad person takes that information and they have all of your account information
credit
there.
card you've used,
Correct.
Passwords,
Because
everything.
if you're on a cruise ship or you're in a hotel and you're away and you didn't bring your own personal device that has a secured network, like you're going through Verizon or AT&T, you're now susceptible to anybody else that's on that network. And that's how they capture that data. I tell folks a lot of times the simple word of no. And we're not trained in this society to say no anymore. And you don't need to be rude about it, but if someone's asking you for something of a personal nature, it's okay to say no until you feel confident to give it up. You go to the large retail stores today, and a lot of the folks that work at those stores are the younger generation, young kids, and they are trained right out of the gate from some of the large stores, we'll say, well, we won't name any, but they're trained that to ask for that individual's cell phone number or zip code or address. And that's to get you on their mailing list, which they sell to a third party, which is where a lot of the hackers go. So when I go to a store and a young person says to me, well, I need your cell phone number, I say no. It usually confuses them because they're trained to ask for it, and very few people will tell them no. Most people will willingly give up that cell phone number. Now they have it. That cell phone number is out there. People that aren't even on the internet, if you've had a home phone number for 30 years, it's very easy to find on the internet. So the scams are very easy to do because the information's readily available. But if you're not sure whether it's in person, electronic, or in mail, it's okay to say no and make sure you validate before you give that information up.
Do we have any reasonable expectation of privacy in today's world, or is that gone?
It's a big question with a big net around it, in the sense that I think reasonable and privacy means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. When you think about the technology we use, do we expect that people are listening to our calls?
Besides the NSA.
If the NSA truly wants to listen to my phone calls, God love them. They're very boring. They're not. They're listening to very specific phone calls and under very specific circumstances. And in my opinion, that's been greatly exaggerated. They're not listening to you and I talking on the phone about coming today and what this event would entail. That's not really on their radar screen. But as we think about privacy, you see cities and towns. I mean, Europe, there's European countries that cameras are at every stop sign, at every corner, and they view everything, and it's out there in the public. It's not hidden, it's known. I think we have to understand that there's now a lot of video, a lot of cameras, and pretty much everywhere we go, on every major highway, there's cameras. You think about in Massachusetts, 128 has cameras, 495 has cameras, the Mass Pike has cameras. You can go on a website and look at those yourself. They're public domain, you can go look at them. Does that invade our privacy? To me, no.
Stores are recording every move you make.
Stores record things for two reasons: for security, but they also use tracking software to see what you buy, what aisles you spend the most time in. There's very sophisticated software that they tie into the security cameras. From the minute you walk in the door, it tracks your movements in the store. And the reason is to see where they put the goods that you would buy. So they want to know where most people head first, where they head second, what products and services you buy, and that gives them real data to make sure that their end displays and their displays in the stores in general function in a way that's going to yield the most amount of sales for them.
And now the whole topic of drones has entered the mainstream, and I've been talking about drones for years and what's happening in Pakistan, but now, in terms of lives and used for safety or as a weapon. But now drones are being used to watch over people, spy on people, keep track of people. What are your thoughts on drones?
My feeling is we're very fortunate that we live in the United States, which is, the best place you could possibly live in the world, and the safest. That safety comes with some expectations. We're very fortunate in that we have the ability to do things to keep our citizens safe. But you also have to understand that there's ways in that they need to do that, and we have to trust that the people who are doing it correctly, legally, and not using it for things against us.
There are some police departments that are looking into and are already using drones.
They are, and my opinion is if it's going to keep us safer, and it's done legally and for the right reasons, I'm okay with that. Do occasionally someone cross the line and do something different? Of course, we're always going to see that. But I think as a whole, they're used very judiciously and for the right reasons.
Final thoughts, Dave, on safety, on personal security, especially for the elderly, for children, the people that are most targeted.
Again, be prepared. It's okay to say no, and think about what you're doing and what information you're giving up. Just because you received an email doesn't mean you have to click on it. Just because someone asks you for some personal data does not mean that you need to give that personal data up. If you're not sure who they are or what they're going to use it for, it's okay to say no.
It's okay to say no.
It's okay to say no. I don't give that information up willingly unless I know for sure it's going to be used correctly as well as being protected.
All right, David Cullen, thank you so much for your insight and all you do. I know you go and give a lot of talks about this, so thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And that's our show. Thanks so much for joining us. And if there's someone or an organization you'd like to see featured on Hometown Talents and Treasures, email me at the address you see on your screen. Remember, it can be anyone. The important thing is that they selflessly donate their talent and time to help others. See you next time.